Well, our speaker is Sue or Susan Gaines, and she has been a member of WOW since the early days. Her husband is Tom. They have three sons, and they all live in Michigan. She has a daughter who lives in here. She is a psychologist named Dr. Kim Eckert, and they have nine grandchildren. They've been members of Christ Church since about 2007. Now, Susan had a wonderful career. She was a commercial construction loan manager for a bank. I bet you didn't know that. She was a numbers person. I admire numbers people. Um, but she has had many holy interruptions in her life. And what you're going to hear about is her son with schizophrenia. She also had these interruptions, the distant care and deaths of her brother, her parents, her in laws. Many of you have experienced that. That all happened in a 3-year period. She's battled breast cancer twice in 4 years, and she is dealing with some medical concerns with her husband. So she's going to speak from her heart about a very difficult period in her life. Join me in welcoming Sue Gaines.
Well, this has been a very difficult journey that we've been on, and I try to tell my story without crying, but if I cry, you can cry with me. It's wonderful to be able to talk to people that I know love me and love God. Um, Mental illness affects an awful lot of people, and we hear things on television or see things on television about all these bad things that have happened. I mean, killings and shootings, and the first thing that Tom and I think about is, I bet that kid had schizophrenia. I bet it's mental illness. And our country needs to increase the funds of mental illness rather than decrease them. So when we vote, we need to think about that. But I also want to talk about the stigma of mental illness. If our son had a brain tumor, I could tell you about his brain tumor, and you'd all be sorry. Everybody would be sad and hope he would get well, which of course is natural. But our son, sometimes he acts strange. He might look strange. Um, Kind of he's an embarrassment. He maybe doesn't dress clean. He's got schizophrenia. And people would think, ah, schizophrenia. But that's a disease of the brain. He didn't get a brain tumor up here, but he got a disease. He has a disease of the brain, and we should not have any more bad feelings or scared feelings. Um, Without medication, it can be scary, and we went through the years of that. Talking also about this demon possession, what we just talked about. Of course, we know, and we're all trained when we go to anything with psychology, that demon possession and mental illness are not the same thing. No one has ever been able to drive a demon from a mentally ill person. It just doesn't come out like that. It takes years of therapy, years of medication. But we've been talking about interruptions, and I would say this particular interruption began in November of 1970. I was pregnant with our third child. We had two sons, and I wanted a baby girl. I just had prayed and prayed for a baby girl. And I just knew God was going to answer my prayer. I had the two boys, and He was going to give me a baby girl. And it didn't work out that way. When it was time for the baby to be born, the doctor induced labor because he thought the baby was so large. And it was just a horrible labor. It was very bad labor. And when the baby was finally born, it was a blue baby, and it was a boy, blue baby. And when he put that baby on my stomach, it didn't move. It was so blue. I begged God for that baby to live. I didn't care if it was a boy or a girl. I just wanted that baby to live. And I've kind of carried that same thought for almost 55 years now. He'll be 55 next month. The reason I talk about this very difficult birth or delivery, the doctors gave me everything possible, injections, everything, because I was just hard labor for all that time. And our daughter, Kim Eckert, she said that in evaluating when you're going to talk with someone, you evaluate them when we say, was there a problematic birth? because they realize that problems with birth can affect your mind, the baby's mind. Maybe the drugs that they were giving the mother, just coming out of the birth canal, probably the loss of oxygen. I don't know if this is what caused this for Kevin. We do know he has brain damage because of the things that have happened all through his life. Whether this is the cause of schizophrenia, I don't know. But we had problems with Kevin from day one. I mean, it was a very difficult baby. He should have been in special ed by the time he got to grade school. He just had every problem. He had learning disabilities, probably was ADHD, but it was just a very difficult time for him. Our other three children excelled at everything, straight A's, and it's kind of sad. No, it was very sad. They would bring home straight A's or some award from school the same day Kevin would bring home an awful report, or he'd been sent to the principal so many times that day. Could one of you bring my water up, please? My mouth is getting very dry. I don't think I'm nervous, but dried my mouth right out. Thank you. Sorry, this isn't burgundy colored. It's a different color. Everything else I have on. Took 5 years for Kevin to graduate from high school. Our other kids all went to college and did graduate work, but he had a very difficult time. But he finally did graduate, and he got an apartment with a friend of his, and then we kind of went through a revolving door, because he'd move back home and then he'd leave, move back home for different apartments. Finally, he bought a used trailer from a friend, and he moved into this trailer just north of us. So that was better for him. Now it's about 1999. He's born in 1970, so now he's about 29 years old, which is about typical when mental illness, especially schizophrenia, starts in the late 20s. Sometimes people that do very well are in college, graduate school maybe, and they have a breakdown. Maybe that triggers some type of big stress. But Kevin was living with us, or not with us, he was in the trailer. Our daughter was living in Wheaton, going to Wheaton Graduate School for psychology. And Kevin would stop at our house on his way home from work, generally to eat dinner, and he'd start talking to me about, well, I would sit like this, oh, this was bad. This was, I was making some kind of a sign at him. There was no way I could sit or put my fingers around my face. People on the television, they were talking to him. The people in the cars that were driving, they were talking. They were making signs at him. All of the finger movements they all said something different. There were awful signs. He just kept telling me about that every night. And it was so upsetting. I thought, he's just jealous. He's just jealous of his sister. The two of them were, about 3 years apart in age. And so I finally said something to Kimberly about it, and she was very kind. And she said, Mother, he's not jealous. I think he's sick. I think he has schizophrenia. That was the first time I'd ever thought about it was a mental illness. And it was just, and his daughter, our daughter, actually diagnosed him. While I'm talking about her, I get my reading glasses on, I want to read. Kimberly wrote, about the same time she wrote this book, Schizophrenia, Living in a Different World. I think she was really studying that at the time in graduate school. Isn't that a coincidence? She was studying that about the same time Kevin is breaking down. I think coincidences are just kind of God things. So and this is about voices that Kevin was hearing. Just imagine that you're hearing voices that no one else hears. These voices provide a running commentary, often judgmental, on your thoughts and activities. Sometimes the voices are quiet, but they're never completely silent. You hear them at night in bed. You hear them in the car. You hear them when you're at work. When having conversations with other people, you must struggle to distinguish the voices in your head with the voices of other people talking to you. If you tell people about the voices you're hearing, people think you're crazy. At times, they're so loud, you feel powerless and completely out of control. They are so loud, in fact, that you have trouble hearing cues in the real world. If someone speaks to you, you're unsure if they spoke out loud or was in your head. Because of the constant noise in your head, you have problems concentrating. You feel little control over your own body. You find yourself laughing hysterically at work and at other places, but you don't know why. You see signs and symbols in everyday objects and activities. When women cross their legs, you think they're trying to seduce you. You become angry that these women are trying to seduce you when the voices are commanding you to purify your body and your mind. This is it's hard to imagine. In one of the trainings that we took, they showed us, tried to help us understand the voices. They had people go outside the room while we were sitting at our table, and they taught us to do this little project, actually just drawing a square with a pencil. And then the people from out the room came and stood behind us, and they all started talking at once. And then the director, the teacher of the class, she instructed us on drawing this little, just 4 different lines. You know, with all that talking going on, there wasn't anybody in the room that could draw those 4 lines. It's just very interesting because there's just too much stimulation. Your brain can only handle so much. And it was a good thing to us for know that it's not just something that's going on in their mind. When they hear things, they hear it as if it's loud. I mean, it's totally out loud. So it was, I can't imagine what our son went through. But Kevin's friends actually started calling us about Kevin, and that he lost his job. He worked as a printer. He'd lost his job, and he needed to move out of his trailer. He couldn't pay the bills. He had to pay rent. He couldn't do that. He really needed help. When you know your son needs help and you have a relationship with him, you're afraid to force him to go to the doctor, what do? I mean, if you force him, you're going to lose that relationship. So I'm going to tell you about miracle number 1, how God solved that miracle for us. Kevin had moved. He was in this trailer and slept back in the bedroom, but he moved to the living room of the trailer because he couldn't sleep. He was hearing voices. Of course, he had the electricity turned off, so where did those voices come from that he was hearing? And he moved to another room to sleep. It didn't get any better. Kevin had an hallucination. Things were getting really bad with us. Kevin always felt different in our family, probably because he didn't perform like the other ones performed. He never felt like he belonged. So he had an hallucination that his parents were not us. His parents lived in Canada, and his parents we killed them. Tom and I killed his parents, and we took our son Kevin as an infant, held him upside down, and we carved his name Kevin in his thighs in Hebrew. We don't know Hebrew, but how in the world would we even have spelled his Kevin in Hebrew? Or how in the world would we have taken a knife and carved it into his thighs and killed his parents? You can imagine the heartbreak, because he believed this. He truly believed this. It got so bad at his trailer that he finally called the police. And they came. One policeman came, maybe 2, I don't know. These policemen were trained in Crisis Intervention Team, CIT. Some policemen have been trained this way, so they know how to act with mentally ill people. They know what to say. They know what to say so they don't get them even more riled up. And, we had never even heard of CIT at that time, but isn't it a coincidence? God did. God knew about CIT, and that's who he sent. And when the policeman came to the trailer, he talked to Kevin. Kevin told him he had taken a black marker and he'd drawn all over his back of his thighs to show the policeman those are the scars in case you can't see them. And he told him all about what had happened and about the noise and these it was in the Monarch Society was something he also believed in. And these people that were making the voices that he was hearing, they were in his trailer, and Kevin wanted help. And so that's why he had the policeman come. The policemen, they were very good. They talked to Kevin. They got Kevin to tell him our phone number. They said, could you tell us your father's phone number? And he did. And so after the policeman left, he went back to the office and he called Tom. And he said, I've been to your son's trailer. I think he needs help. And Tom said, we know he needs help. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to do to get him the help he needs. Policeman said it's very simple. You go to the courthouse and you file a petition for Kevin to be taken for evaluation, and you put on there that he is a danger to himself and others. That's what you need to be remember. If you know anybody that needs help, those are the magic words. He's a danger to himself and others. So Kevin did that. Or not Kevin, Tom did that the next day. And then he called our two sons, the two other sons, and told them all about it, called our daughter. And he took the petition to the police, and they said, tomorrow morning, we're going to go over there and get Kevin. So our two sons decided they would come, and they wanted to be with Kevin so he wouldn't be scared. It was so sweet that they loved their brother so much. And Kimberly, of course, she's up in Chicago. We're in Michigan at this point. And Tom, he drove, he was there also, but he drove to the other part of the trailer court so that Kevin wouldn't know he was there. At the same time all of this was going on, I was up in Mackinac Island for a Win Some Women conference. I don't know if you've ever heard about that. Win Some Women. They have it, I think, twice a year, and maybe two things each time they're sold out. It's wonderful. And Mackinac Island, to stay at the Grand Hotel, you can't beat that. So I went with a friend at Mackinac Island, and Jill Briscoe was speaking, who is wonderful. Her husband's a minister, and she wrote a book, Out of the Storm and Into His Arms. I meant to bring it with me, but I forgot. But and we talked with Kathy, or Kathy taught about the storm with Jesus. This storm was really important to me because it touched me personally. Jill said that Jesus knows the storms are coming in our lives. She said Jesus allows these storms. He speaks to us in the storm, and he controls the size and strength of the storm. She's there to promote her book, but her messages every time about the storms were so helpful to me. And everywhere I went at the hotel those 2 days, they had prayer baskets. I dropped prayer for Kevin and every one of them. I mean, I was so upset. What are we going to do? But one of the things Jill says is, when our faith is grasping for breath, this is the worst storm. Get out of the boat and keep your eyes on Jesus. Have faith and dependence upon him. He will get you through. I've been through many storms in my life. I'm 81 years old now, and I can tell you that Jesus has been with me through every storm, no matter how awful it was. I know he's right there beside me. Well, when the retreat ended and my friend and I are driving home, we got across the bridge because this was Mackinac Island, and the cell service started working again. And Tom called, and all these prayers I'd had and all this concern, Tom called and he said, guess what? He said, it's okay. Our prayers have been answered. And he started to tell me about what had happened with the police and the boys' plan. The boys had been there. Tom had been there. The police came. Kevin got in the ambulance, and he went to the hospital. Tom had to go in to answer a few questions. But when Tom called me, Kevin was in the hospital. And Jeff and Brent and Tom were meeting me at a restaurant. I was going to get to go out to eat that night with my sons and praise God for what had happened. Can you imagine the joy that we had? But of course, the joy was so good that he was getting help. It was wonderful he was getting help. But apparently the hospital had enough money. Depends on how much money the hospitals have, how much government funding they've had, how long your mentally ill person might be in the hospital, get treatment. But Kevin was there for 30 days, and we would go to visit him every day. And going to visit him and having the guard unlock the door so we could go in, and then seeing Kevin, who wouldn't let us touch him. And another strange thing, he had brought his Bible with him. Apparently, when the police came to get him, he ran back and got his Bible, took it with him. I like to think he was reading his scriptures and praying to God, but he was decoding it, which is what a lot of them did back at that time, maybe still do. I still felt like he's got the Holy Word, as long as he's holding on to the Holy Word. Sitting in his room one time, I touched his Bible, and I was saying, "Oh, Kevin, I'm so glad you got your Bible. Don't touch it." He was so upset that I touched his Bible. Well, then we see all these other people in the middle, and so, well, in the middle part of the hospital. Oh, they were really mentally ill, much worse than our son. Thinking Kevin has to stay here with these people. Then we got ready to leave, and the guard had to unlock the door to let us out. And by this time, I am crying. I'm just so heartbroken. And that guard was so kind. He hugged me and let me cry on his shoulder. It was just, it was awful. Well, Kevin stayed there, and then the psychiatrist called and talked to Tom, and he said, "We're going to release him. None of the medication we've tried is helping him." He said, "There's one more, but I don't think it's worth trying." Tom talked to the psychiatrist and said, "Please, please try that last one." And he tried it, and it worked. Dry mouth again. One thing we've learned through all of this with Kevin, somebody has to be an adversary. Kevin couldn't do it by himself. He had nobody to help him. Kevin pleaded with this psychiatrist to try that last medication, and he did, and it worked. And so that was wonderful. So at the end of the 30 days, Kevin had not applied for Social Security disability yet. He had no money, no income. So the social worker told us they were just going to have to discharge him to a shelter. Can you imagine that? The government pays to keep him for 30 days, and then they're just going to send him to a shelter because he didn't have that Social Security disability. So Tom and I said, "We'll pay for a group home." I mean, he wasn't well enough to come home to live with us. They wouldn't allow that. But we said, "We'll pay for a group home." Back then, in around 2000, it was $600 a month, which that wasn't too bad. And we said, "We'll pay it. And once his Social Security disability kicks in, then, that would cover it." So they gave us a list of group homes that we could look at. We could go pick one out for Kevin. Well, one was as bad as the next. I mean, they were awful. The nice ones, the good ones that they really recommended on that list had a waiting list. And we learned right then, if you're going to have a breakdown, you got to plan in advance if there's a waiting list. And maybe if this had happened several times, maybe while Kevin was in the hospital, 2 weeks in, maybe we should have gotten, you learn as you go. But we paid for what we thought was the best. Kevin went through this 2 different times, and we found 2 different places for him. As the one that was the nicest, he had a nice room, a nice private bedroom. They each had their own bedrooms. We didn't realize that every day they had to take all the people in there had to go to the basement. That's the owner of the house said. She sent them all to the basement, and they watched TV and laid around on the couches down there. Some of them were so medicated they just, were comatose. And they were all chain smokers. Smoking does something for the brain, the nicotine, and so it calms the brain. So a lot of them are smokers. But it was horrible. Can you imagine having to stay down there like that? At one time, that did cause Kevin he had been on medication long enough to get up and find himself a job so he had somewhere else to go during the day. We found that the people who ran these group homes, a lot of them were just about as mentally ill as the people inside. In Detroit, all you had to do was, I don't know how they checked them. They must not have checked them very well, but the only thing they had to do was provide 3 meals a day for them, provide a bed for them to sleep in, and administer the medication. They had the medicine. They gave the medicine out. So those 3 things. And then these people, they told them to stay in the basement or wherever they wanted to. Well, one time when Kevin was at forced in the beginning in the hospital, the court ordered him to take medication, and that was wonderful. So he was terrified if he didn't take his medication as directed, he would be back in the hospital. But by this time, he's out of the hospital, and he's maybe living in a group home. I can't remember back that far. But his psychiatrist decided it would be better than him taking pills every day to go to the hospital once a month for an injection. I don't know why he had to go to the hospital, why she couldn't have just given him the injection there, but He was terrified. He was not going back to that hospital. So he asked his psychiatrist or his lawyer to find a different psychiatrist, which he did, and it was a quack. And the quack said he didn't need to take his medication every day. So he did not request a renewal of the forced medication. So anyway, he was never on medication again. There was one time with Kevin when he was doing so well, and we even had him come back and lived at our house when we moved to West Michigan, over by Lake Michigan. And he wanted to go back to college. We got him enrolled at a community college so he could, be more like his brothers and his sister. And he just was so excited. Everything was well. He had long hair. He went to the barber, got his hair cut short. It was just wonderful. And so then it's time in January, it's time for us to go back to Florida because we went to Florida every year. We had a condo there. We were so stupid. I can't believe we went back and left Kevin in our condo, or our house there in Spring Lake, Michigan. And wasn't long before that community college got to be too much for him, and he quit taking his medication, and he got all upset about there's supposed to be a mattress in laying down the floor in our room, or the room he was in, and it was gone, and he was so psychotic about it. And he had been talking to us. We knew there was an issue. We had a home watcher. Kevin wouldn't let the home watcher come in the house. But one day Kevin was out walking on one of the roads, and our home watcher, who was a retired state policeman, he saw him. So he ran over and got in our house real quick. And have you ever seen the movie The Beautiful Mind, and how this man had put papers and stuff all over the walls? That's what he found. Kevin had taken, we had a lot of moving paper, so big paper. Kevin is very artistic, so he'd drawn posters, drawn things all over these, very psychotic. And he had taped those all over the house. So we had to have him committed again. And the neighbors said that they took him away in handcuffs. Goodness sake, we're having a lot of storms, or somebody's moving something up there. Okay. Well, anyway, there were a lot of periods we didn't know what happened to Kevin. We didn't know where he was. Tom managed to talk to some policemen, and they were checking on Kevin all the time. He finally got into an apartment where actually he still lives today. He was mental illness people. They found an apartment for him, and we bought all new furniture to put in that apartment. During the years, he's trashed most of that, but that's fine. And we've replaced some. Sometimes he goes to the dumpster and finds things. But during this time, I want to be sure and tell you about NAMI, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. We were spending the winter in Naples, probably just the next year or so. And we went to an 8-week course. NAMI is taught by people like us. Tom and I eventually took the training to teach this. And we learned about all types of mental illness, every kind, and medication, and why they don't take medication. When we've taught a class on this many times, so people say, why didn't he just take his medicine? What? I don't understand why the problem is. Well, this is the problem. Number one, they believe they're more intelligent than anybody else. Kevin used to think he knew things worldwide. He blamed Tom on a water shortage, I think what country it was once. But they are very intelligent in their minds. They know what's happening. The medication has side effects. They might be gaining weight. They may have, Kevin had a lot of leg issues, leg cramps, and he was like he had Parkinson's disease. One of the sad parts at the time that Kevin was going through this, my father had Parkinson's disease, and it was heartbreaking to see Kevin shaking. Even his head shook. Everything about his body shook. Worse than my dad. And you wonder why, if somebody was totally right, why would you take medication if you thought you were so smart? Why would you take medication when you take it? If I take my pill tonight, I'm going to shake all over. I'm going to have this and this and this happen. Why would you take any of that? They don't understand that the pill is actually going to make them better. When life throws a bomb at you, most people like to try to find some way to help others. And that's what we did when we joined NAMI. We ended up, it was so helpful to us in Naples. When we came back here, we went to Knoxville and took classes and learned to teach the NAMI classes. And we taught in Florida and we taught here. We taught one, we tried to do NAMI with the Christian influence. We did one right in this building at this church. One of the ones we did in Florida was interesting. The NAMI classes for people about so they can get help for their loved ones. And it's not for the loved ones, it's for the family to family. Well, one time in Naples, this young man was in the class and we went around and introduced ourselves. He said, I'm the loved one. I'm not the parent, I'm the loved one. And we learned a lot from him. He learned a lot of bad language too, but we learned a lot from him. Well, he said one day he and his mother were having a little disagreement, fight. And his mother said, I just don't know how to get through to you, which I could understand that. But he said, Mom, I'm on the other side of this wall and I don't know how to get to you either. It really opened up our eyes to see what it was that Kevin was dealing with. He couldn't get through to us. We couldn't get through to him. So many things happened to Kevin, bad things. You know, it's hard to love somebody who's mad at you and angry, but unconditional love is what we as parents need to have. There are a lot of parents who turn their backs on their kids when they have mental illness. They don't have anybody to support them. We didn't do that. We couldn't do that. However, for a lifetime, all of Kevin's life, we felt failures. All the problems Kevin had, we took it personally. We felt we were failures. And so actually, when he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, it was almost a relief to us because finally, after almost 29 years, we realized it was not our fault. I wish I had had cesarean section or given birth naturally. Maybe Kevin would be better, okay today. But I don't know. Those are questions that when I get up there, I'm going to ask God because he's got all the answers and somehow, he allowed all this to happen. Maybe he thought Tom and I could do it. Bigger thoughts about us than what we have. But I want to tell you the big answered prayer because we talk about these interruptions. Things have been bad for Kevin. They've kind of gradually gotten better. By around age 50, they usually get better. But when we moved back here in 2023, we got to see Kevin and, things were getting better. And then he was calling us and he said, he's tired of having, not being able to sleep at night and all of these things he had. And he got on the phone and he started looking out, trying to find psychologists. He pursued the psychologist this time. He found a psychologist. He found a therapist. He gets on a waiting list to be seen. And he finally got to see them. And they got him on medicine and somebody to talk to every week. I'm thanking God for this. I prayed. Sometimes you pray for something, you pray a lifetime, and you know that I've got another prayer that I may never see answered in my life, but I know God's working on it. He's going to do something. That's how I felt with Kevin. What a thank you it is that he answered this prayer in our life. Kevin now is on medication. Our older son, he brings him down every so often. They drive 12, 13, 14 hours from Michigan down to here to see us on a Friday. We have them on Saturday, and then Sunday they drive back. This past weekend, they came on Friday and stayed till Monday because it was just my birthday, and they came for my birthday. And if anybody's on Facebook and you see me on Facebook, I've got a picture. We went to Malone's, the whole family, our daughter and her family, and Jeff, Kevin, and Tom and I for my birthday. And I'm saying, thank you, Lord. I never dreamed it would be this good, but it is. And that is my prayer. And every one of you, I know we've all got problems. None of us, I can't just say I had one. I've got one after the other. I should be good. And I also think I'm an expert in worrying, but I'm good in doing problems. And now I've learned I'm good in turning it over to God. And my prayer is that you will be the same, that you will be able to turn your thoughts over to God. And I'd like to talk to you more about NAMI and give you the information for NAMI. So if you need help, you know where to go for help. But let's end in prayer. Father, thank you. Thank you so much for this group of loving ladies. Thank you for the courage that you've given to me. I love you, Lord. Each one of these ladies love you. Thank you for being in the storm with us. And thank you for bringing us out. In your son's name we pray. Amen.